What is up, everyone? Welcome to another live stream here at fantasypoints.com. I'm John Hansen. Today, we are reconvening for our 2022 Town Hall. We used to call this a guru gathering. It's much more than a guru gathering. We got several gurus here, by the way. Greg Cosell, Adam Caplan, Graham Barfield, Joe Dolan, Wes Huber, Scott Barrett, Tom Brawley, and the gang's all here. We're ready to rock and roll. We already banged out last week. We did all the NFC teams, but today, because the NFC was a little rushed, and Greg Cosell, our content advisor, he had a great suggestion that we slow it down, chop it up a little bit, simmer down, and that's what we're going to do. So today, here on Wednesday, May 11th, as we do this thing, record it live, we're going to do the AFC East and the AFC North. Of course, we're rolling here at fantasypoints.com. 2022 projections already up, and they look good as far as I'm concerned. Plenty more articles forthcoming. Head on over to fantasypoints.com. Get your subscription in now. The prospect guide from Greg Cosell and all the other, Devy and keeper related content available in that thing. And of course, if you are into it, the PGA content. We're just getting started on that, but I know the content is outstanding. And speaking of outstanding content, guys, let's get into it here. We'll take a little bit more of our time and cover all the major storylines here. And, if Graham has a question or Wes or whatever, we'll just kind of, be informal about it, and we'll open up questioning to the room. But we'll focus, spoon feeding questions to Adam and Greg. But we start in the AFC East, and we start with the Buffalo Bills. Adam, I will start with you. You were pretty dialed in here in Buffalo. What is the vibe right now? What is the sense that you get in terms of the loss of Brian Daboll? We all know how instrumental he's been in the development of Josh Allen. What are you hearing? What's your gut feeling in terms of, pulling back maybe a little bit from the expectations here with this loss?
Well, John, they know it's a big loss. Brian Daboll did a terrific job of molding and challenging Josh Allen, and Josh Allen is willing to be coached hard, and he took it like a man, and he got better, obviously. And Ken Dorsey, the new OC, was the quarterback's coach. He had a lot to do with it as well. But there's an unknown here for Dorsey calling plays. He hasn't done it here before. So they're going to keep basically the same style of offense. But play calling's an art. That's kind of what I've learned. People could say how smart people is, or how smart they are, but until they actually do it, you don't know. But they are definitely excited about the potential. They made a bunch of offensive line changes. They'll have a minimum of two new starters. In fact, it should be two. Mm-hmm. Ryan Bates, unbelievable story.
They had Saffold, on the last legs, I guess, right. Maybe, but always a good run blocker.
Right. Ryan Bates will be the right guard. They had a bunch of the guy was traded for a can of corn 3 years ago from the Eagles, and nobody wanted him. And he wound up being their most versatile lineman. Now he's going to start at guard. So they feel good about it. And we obviously can get in. There's going to be a little bit, obviously, of changes at receiver in terms of who'll be starting, who the top backups will be. But getting back to your question, they're excited because they like Ken Dorsey. He clearly was involved in the passing game concepts. But let's not mistake it. Brian Daboll was the brains of that offense. So there's going to be, John, a little bit of wait and see.
Yeah. And we got pretty strong rumors, Adam, that they were very interested in going running back in round one. We had a couple of Bills insiders who were fairly convinced of that. They were going to do that. Now they don't do that. They took the corner, and then they get James Cook. Would that be an indication that the offense probably won't change all that much in terms of being pass centric?
It's still going to be pass centric. There's no question about it. James Cook is, a smaller back. Greg had some great pre-draft stuff on him. Singletary should still be the lead back, but it's how they cut into his role.
Yeah,
Zach Moss has been kind of, I hate to say bench, but he's kind of an afterthought. He was given the role of the main back. He didn't take it and run with it, if you will. So James Cook, look, they were after McCaffrey. They wanted him, I was told, pretty strongly by someone close to the situation. They wanted him. They were told that he was not available. About J.D. McKissick, them trying to get him as their passing down back. So there you go. There's James Cook. The only question, you and I were talking about this on our show today on Sirius XM. how many carries could he handle? That would be the challenge.
Yeah, Greg, over to you. You don't go ahead and draft a guy like James Cook as a signal that your identity is changing, right? I mean, he's a satellite type player more so than foundational player at this early stage, and very good receiver, Greg. So how do you think he fits in here? How do you see that working out? And I think it's a sign that obviously they're not going to like balance it out like we thought maybe they would. They'll probably still be a little pass happy.
Two thoughts. I think with what they did in the draft and in free agency, I would not be surprised. And again, this now gets to percentages and degrees, but I would not be surprised to see them do some expansion in terms of personnel. I would not be surprised to see them line up with two backs, because James Cook is a receiver, much more so than a runner, certainly at this point in his career with the team that drafted him. So it would not surprise me to see Cook and Singletary on the field at the same time, because that dictates defensive personnel. The other thing I wouldn't be surprised to see is a little more 12 personnel, because both O.J. Howard and Dawson Knox can be detached from the formation. So they're not changing anything about being a pass first team. They can just do it in different ways. Just a couple of thoughts I had when I saw what they did both in free agency and the draft.
Oh, yeah. I thought you had another point there, but yeah, good stuff there. And we did get a question here, I see, from Scott Cobe, who apparently has been a subscriber for over a decade. So thank you, Scott. And his question is, how is the Bill receiving situation going to shake out after Stephon Diggs? Adam, you and I talked about Gabe Davis today. I know our guy, Wes Huber, is all in on Gabe Davis, and for what it's worth, if you care, I'm sniffing Gabe Davis as the guy that I'm going to pick for my breakout receiver this year. Greg, your thoughts on Gabe Davis, where he is, where you see him in terms of, like, he's a guy who's been about 35 catches a year the last couple of years. He's not a high target guy. I think he'll get about 100 targets, but even at his catch rate, that's 60 grabs and a lot of touchdowns. Your thoughts on Gabe Davis, the player, what you've seen from him, the growth you've seen, and how he might fit in now with, a guy like Cole Beasley gone?
Well, he clearly became more of a factor, John, as the season progressed. And I think that's the reason that people are making, those kinds of predictions, including yourself. They have an interesting receiving core. I think a lot of people have lost track of the fact that they signed Jamison Crowder, who's a very good slot receiver. I think that what you'll see a lot of too, and I don't know how they'll work in the rookie Khalil Shakir, who I liked very much based on his tape. I don't know if he has a role or not as a rookie, because they still have Isaiah McKenzie, who obviously had a role last year in specific games. But I think this is a team that can line up receivers in different spots. I think they can all line up outside. I think they can all line up in the slot. I'm very curious to see, because I know Ken Dorsey was there, and they're obviously not going to change the concepts, because Josh Allen has clearly developed a comfort level with the concepts, but you can certainly change where you line up personnel without changing your concepts. So, I'm struggling with who's going to get, what Davis is going to get in terms of targets. We know Diggs will be targeted, but Crowder is a guy you could target a lot as well. We know that they throw a lot of short passes. So, that's your department, John, but I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. Well, talking about Crowder, going from Beasley to Crowder, it's difficult because I had to give a little bit of that love to, Isaiah McKenzie as well here, and even a couple of grabs to Shakir. But, compare and contrast what Jamison Crowder and Cole Beasley can do for the offense. I felt more like Cole Beasley was a check down guy, whereas Jamison Crowder, I feel like you can get a little bit more expansive in what you do with him.
Well, I would make the argument, and again, none of this is 100% because nothing's 100%, but I think Crowder is a little more of a movement receiver. I think you can get the ball to him on the move, whereas Beasley, not that you could never do that, but Beasley struck me more as kind of a sit-down guy.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think Crowder does give you a little bit more, I don't want to say explosiveness, but maybe for want of a better word right now, that's he may give you that out of the slot.
Yeah,
John,
sure.
Just add what I was told of Shakir is their plan is to play him on the outside. I know that's probably going to be a surprise to some people, but that's what I was told. Yeah.
Well, maybe that's a function of the log jam that they have, like an inside receiver type.
They made that pretty much that decision because they thought he can do it. Well, now part of it is what you just said. On the outside, they don't have a top backup outside receiver. McKenzie is, is smaller.
Yeah,
Kumro barely played. They just don't have anybody else. He's going to need to play on the outside.
I mean, that is a very good point, actually, because their depth in terms of sizable outside receivers, and Diggs not that big. That could bode well for Gabe Davis. We're looking at a big role here for Gabe Davis. I'm only giving him 100 targets, and let's go 60% catch rate. He's been around 57. 60 grabs at the touchdown percentage that he's been at would probably give him 12 tutties here. So, Greg, the only other question I had, we could open up to the room, would be about Dawson Knox. We've always loved him. I was on that quickly when I saw that emergence last year, and I know a lot of our people got him, and he was good on that waiver wire. But again, I always go back to how much of the targets that he got, the action were like, oh, you're Dawson Knox, we're designing this play for you, and we love you, or whatever. And how much was just like in a check down situation, like a Dalton Schultz?
They're not a true check down team in that sense. But they have so many weapons that Knox is not really targeted the way, a lot of us thought, gee, he's got a lot of talent.
Yeah.
They did on occasion, but I would doubt, John, I don't know what your projection is. I would doubt that he'll see a whole lot more than he has.
Yeah.
To
your point, Greg, I only have him catching 58 balls. So
they have a lot of weapons. I mean, he'll be targeted clearly at times as he was a year ago, no question. But he's not going to be the focus of their pass game.
Does he intrigue you? And like, if he were put in a situation where the targets were upwards, over 100, like, what do you think of this player? He's very athletic, but is he kind of a piece guy, more so than a foundational type receiver in a passing game?
That's hard to say because he's a piece guy now. So look, Dalton Schultz had 120 targets last year and caught 78 balls. I think I'm somewhere in that range. No one would have said prior to last year, John, that he could do that. So those are tough questions to answer.
Yeah. I guess the only other one would be back to circling around to Singletary. We kind of know what he is at this point. Kind of no frills, but he's not a stiff by any stretch. He's got lateral agility and all that. Did any thoughts, Greg, on the tape down the stretch? It seemed like once he started getting some volume, getting into a rhythm, he did get better and better.
Yeah, I think most backs, the more that they carry, will get into a groove and will just, it's a rhythm to running the football. Mm-hmm. So he did look better. They gave him the ball more. I think Adam may know more about this because he have people he speaks to up there. But I think they probably want to have a meaningful run game that does not include Josh Allen, because no matter how good Josh Allen is or how big Josh Allen is, you can't play that way over a long period of time.
True. Well, anybody else have anything on the Bills here, guys? I know we do have our private chat here, and it looks like Joe Dolan. What do you got, Joe?
Yeah, I was wanted to chime up about 10 minutes ago about Gabriel Davis, but everything covered.
Oh, my bad, dog.
He is, John, just to give you an idea, I've talked about this before, but one of the coaches told me, and this guy doesn't coach the receivers, he just said he's the smartest rookie he'd ever been around. Remember, he was drafted during the beginning of the pandemic, and they asked him to do things like you normally wouldn't ask a rookie, and they're doing it in the pandemic. And in fact, he went up, because they had him learn all three positions at receiver, he wound up showing the other guys how to do it. It's kind of remarkable.
Yeah. And you had told me that, and I'm doing TV. Yeah. Opening week 2020, first place. It's like 4 minutes after 3. Let's go to Orchard Park. And first ball that Josh Allen threw that year was to Gabe Davis. I was like, wow, I thought that was impressive.
Yeah. So he's now a full-time starter. There's no doubt about that. We talked about Crowder is their slot receiver, and Greg has some good information about additionally what he can do. And they've got 4 quality pass targets. It's still going to be a good offense. It's just you don't know with a different play caller now. Is it still going to be heavy Diggs? Is it going to be if Diggs plays 17 games by a surprise? Is it going to be 150 plus pass targets? Probably, but we'll have to see if it changes at all.
All right. Before we move on, anybody else think we're good? By the way, guys, I'm not taking Josh Allen this year at 25 overall. I don't know about you guys.
I did have a question. It's on a more obscure player. Have you heard anything on Marquez Stevenson? I liked him coming out of Houston.
I did too. I don't know exactly where he fits in this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because he won't be on the radar for the season, but I can tell you for the future what they're thinking about.
I mean,
he's been there for
he
2 years.
Could be used as I don't want to say a specialty guy, but they could have a player to design because he can run, he can get vertical. But I don't think he'll see a lot of snaps.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on. Miami Dolphins as Mike McDaniel takes over, and we certainly know what they're going to do. They're going to do a lot of things, I'm sure, but
they're going to run the ball, John.
Oh yeah,
they're signing every back.
I know. Chase Edmonds, never been a good short yardage guy. Raheem Mostert, I mean, who knows? The guy is explosive as hell, but what did he get? Like 1 touch last year. Myles Gaskin, we knew he was miscast. We were on that last year. Salvan Ahmad is journeyman type. So Greg, we're kind of looking at I'm looking at Sony Michel as maybe is he the best fit for the traditional Shanahan running game, basically on the roster?
Well, I think Mostert is a good fit as well if he's healthy. Mostert's probably not a 250 carry guy for a season, but I think Michel and Mostert, to me, certainly Mostert knows the offense. Those 2 guys would strike me as the guys who would get the most carries. And we know they're going to run the ball. So we'll see. But, I mean, that's the one thing we know that they've added is speed all around. But Mike McDaniel is not going to step away from what he does best. Some think he's the best zone run game coach in the NFL. So they're going to start with the run game.
We see. Go ahead, Joe.
John, I wanted to chime in with Graham and Greg here because Graham, you loved Michel with your yards created coming out of Georgia, and he's kind of like Greg. And I want your input here because he's kind of become a grinder in the NFL. Graham, what do you see differently now from when he came out of Georgia? And Greg, maybe you can chime in on that as well.
Well, he's just healthy now. I mean, when he came out of Georgia, I mean, he had a significant injury history. And he immediately got hurt in rookie camp, and it kind of just set him all back again. You and I were talking about this a couple days ago. Just for fantasy this year, I'm much rather just take a shot on Sony Michel super late in drafts than try to mess around with Chase Edmonds early or try to mess around with Raheem Mostert and his injury history. Again though, I mean, this is. It's still, we're still up in the air with this offense and up in the air with how the touches are going to roll. But I'm always a fan of taking the cheaper option. And frankly, I think Michel kind of was what he was last year. I mean, he was a volume carry guy. He wasn't extremely explosive. He wasn't extremely efficient, but he can come in and give this team 12, 15 carries a game.
Yeah, Greg, how do you compare Michel when he came out to what he is now?
I don't know if he was ever truly explosive, Joe.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have put him into that category. I could see Michel being somewhat similar to an Elijah Mitchell for Mike McDaniel. Sort of an inside grinder who was tough, physical. Michel's always been a tough runner. We've seen him be a feature back throughout his short career and been relatively successful at it. Mostert's always been more of the vertically explosive runner. So it's hard to know now how the carries will play out, but I would kind of think that Chase Edmonds kind of loses out here a little bit, from a fantasy perspective. I think if you sign Michel and you have Mostert and it's Mike McDaniel, I'm not sure that Edmonds is going to get a lot of carries.
Yeah, he's your third down back, but Adam, he's making the most money by far, right?
Oh yeah, no, Edmonds is look, he's completely miscast as a lead back, but they're paying him over $6 million this season. It tells you he's going to be the lead back. Now, how the delineation of carries, what does that wind up meaning? Nobody knows.
Right.
Figure that out. And then they're also, I know what Greg's talking about. There'll be a running team, but they could have 80 running backs. Look at the Tyreek Hill, $30 million a year. Okay. It's ridiculous. Jalen Waddle, first round pick, was explosive. Cedric Wilson, $7 million a year. Mike Gesicki on the franchise tag. They're going to throw the ball a lot too, a little bit more than you think.
Yeah, Greg, paint a picture for us how we think they want to run the offense. Because to Adam's point, you add all these pass catchers, you have all these pass catchers, yet we know you don't want Tua throwing it 45 times. We know where Mike McDaniel comes in from. So balance for sure. Run the ball.
Well, it's how to get to the passing game. That's going to be the question, because McDaniel's background is that you get to the passing game through the run game and through the use of base personnel. And in other words, you don't just, line up and empty with 4 wide. That I think will probably be the approach. It's how you get to the passing game. You can create explosive plays in the pass game multiple ways. So what are you trying to do? You're trying to create matchups for Hill, for Waddle. And you can do that by being in 12 personnel. You can do that. I don't know if do they have a fullback on their roster?
Alex Ingold from the Raiders.
There you go. Yeah. That's right.
And John Lovett.
Yeah. So, I mean, by doing that, they're going to be in 21 personnel, just like the 49ers were in 21 personnel over 40% of their offensive snaps a year ago. I think when you guys say they're going to throw it, and Adam, I don't disagree, but it's how do you get to it?
Right. Fair enough.
And that's the key point here.
I'm sure, Greg, we've seen the blueprint of this with Garoppolo, because when you look at Garoppolo's numbers on the career, like 68% completion rate, 5% touchdown percentage, which is very good, or at least well above average, 8 yards an attempt, 8.4. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is like that good with the numbers. So I think, to your point, you set up the pass via this effective running game.
One final point. Their offensive coordinator is an O-line coach, Frank Smith, because I know Frank Smith. And normally when your offensive coordinator is an O-line coach, you run the ball too. Jalen Waddle is clearly not Deebo Samuel in terms of build and size. But I think you're going to see Jalen Waddle line up in the backfield. I think you're going to see Jalen Waddle line up everywhere. And they could have Waddle in the game in the backfield, and they could have Wilson and Hill as split wide receivers. I think you're going to see that.
Wow. Tyreek and Waddle are like the exact same listed height and weight, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Frank Smith also coached tight ends. I'll be interested to see if Gesicki, speaking of what he's done before, I know guys have worked with him. I just wonder how this offense, Greg conceptually gave us kind of an idea of McDaniel's background. But with so many pass targets, I mean, Hill, Waddle, Wilson, Gesicki, and then the kid, the receiver from Texas Tech, the 4th round. I don't know if you guys saw him.
I did.
Yeah, what did you think of him?
I kind of liked him. He's a big kid. He's not necessarily vertical, although he's not slow. He's a big physical kid. He's different from Waddle and Hill. You could make the argument that he's a little more athletic, Jawan Jennings, who they had in San Francisco, who became a factor down the stretch last year. So I thought that kid was pretty interesting on tape. I wasn't surprised he got drafted where he did.
That was my thought, Greg. Believe it or not, that was my thought. Well, maybe that's their Jawan Jennings, their big possession type in the middle of the field kind of a guy, rotational guy. Anybody else have anything on the?
Yeah, I have a few questions. So when I look at this receiving core, I see a lot of redundancy, whereas, Tyreek Hill, 60% of his time is spent in the slot last season. Jalen Waddle, 70% of the time in the slot. Cedric Wilson, 85% of the time in the slot. And then Mike Gesicki, supposedly basically just a big slot wide receiver. So what does that mean for the offense? Is someone or maybe 2 receivers going to be playing out of position? How does this work? Is this not something you're worried about, Greg?
I think ultimately they're playing to their quarterback, Scott. Their quarterback has some limitations. Everybody knows this. I mean, when I was at the combine talking to coaches, everybody knows this about Tua, and they're trying to work off what Tua is. So what you're going to see a lot of is you're going to see a lot of RPOs. You're going to see a lot of bang play action. When you do RPOs, you can have what we call nasty splits, wide receivers who are technically outside receivers, but they're tighter to the formation. You're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see a lot of slant routes, glance routes. You're going to see a lot of quick rhythm throws because that's what works with Tua. And they're going to hope for run after catch. I mean, obviously Hill is super explosive. Waddle is phenomenal run after catch. Actually, the kid they drafted from Texas Tech is really good run after catch as well. So, I mean, I think, Scott, that's what their offense is going to look like, and they'll take a vertical shot here and there, and they'll run the ball. They're going to try to beat you with personnel and formation as opposed to spread, let's throw it.
Might that, by the way.
So you were on this way early, when the draft guide came out 2 years ago. You talked about concerns with Tua regarding limited velocity and deep ball accuracy and arm strength and things like that. And so when they made this trade for Tyreek Hill, everyone was saying, oh, this is basically, McDaniels is trying to get his new Jimmy Garoppolo, who has these limitations, but you surround him with yak superstars who can do a lot of the dirty work for him. But I can't help but wonder if McDaniel is also thinking of maybe 2017 Alex Smith, because before that, for 10 straight seasons, he'd never eclipsed 600 deep passing yards, balls thrown 20 plus yards through the air. And then in 2017, he led the league by a landslide. He doubled his previous high, and he also led the league in passer rating. Could this be a scenario where, like, okay, maybe he has these limitations, but Tyreek Hill is just that ridiculous of a deep threat that he could uplift to obscene highs? Or maybe that 2017 Alex Smith year was an outlier year. But like, when I see this supporting cast and I see the offensive coordinator and I see a Tua Tagovailoa's low ADP, I kind of want to grab him in every single best ball league I'm doing.
Well, a couple of points, and then we can move on. Certain deep throws are not arm strength throws. You can throw fade balls. You can throw over routes. Those are not arm strength throws, the way we think of arm strength. Those will be part of the offense, no question. They will take their shots. But obviously, you're not dealing with a big arm quarterback where the foundation of what you do is going to be throwing the ball deep. And keep one thing in mind. This year in Kansas City, as explosive as Hill is, they were not a deep ball throwing team. That was a misconception. When Mahomes had that bad stretch early and he kind of resettled down, they became a short passing team.
Yeah.
Hill did not run as many vertical routes this year as he did in the previous couple of years. So I think you're going to see that kind of thing in Miami.
I just have
we're all over that too. Who else has one?
Yeah, I just have a couple of points and then one quick question. The one thing about Sony Michel I want to add in there is that none of the running backs that the Dolphins have are good in pass protection. And that's something that Sony Michel is absolutely he's going to run away with that role. So that's big. I think he's going to have a bigger role than what is being projected for him. The consensus. And the other thing you kind of already answered was with Ezu Konma from Texas Tech. I mean, I really like this kid. He's good. He was a beast in college fantasy. I mean, he was very reliable, the only reliable receiver that the Red Raiders had. So I'm actually really excited. I think he's going to be a good addition with the two, with Hill and Waddle. And that's the other thing, is I thought Waddle was actually an excellent vertical receiver when he was at Alabama. So I think having Hill, I think it's gonna open up his game as well. And then the one question that I do have for you guys, Adam and Greg, is have you heard anything on Hunter Long? Because I mean, I like Gesicki, but I think Hunter Long he's more of a just a better built for an inline role. Have you guys heard anything about his development?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, not a thing.
The only thing I would say, Wes, is this. The McDaniel does play a lot of 12 personnel as well. And last year, by the way, they were almost an all 12 personnel offense, but it was Durham, Smythe, and Gesicki. Smythe is still there. I liked Hunter Long coming out of Boston College. I never thought he'd be, the guy. I didn't think he was quite that, but I thought he could be a really higher level number 2. So this to me is an important off season for him, and we don't know how that'll play out because they have Smythe, they have Adam Shaheen, who's obviously on his second team. So I don't know. That's a great question. We don't know the answer yet. But
he's there to block. I mean, Shaheen is there to block. That's why he's still in the league.
Yeah.
But and by the way, here's another one. I forgot Lynn Bowden's still on that team. Holy shit.
Yeah, I know.
Ridiculous how many pass targets they got.
To wrap it up here, quickly, I will give you the number of pass attempts I'm projecting the Dolphins to have, and a couple other. 33.6 attempts a game is what I have Miami Dolphins quarterbacks throwing, which I think is exactly right because it's not a low number, but it sure as hell isn't high because they're going to run the ball.
Probably won't be exactly right, John, because I don't think the 0.6 will come into play there.
We'll find a way to make it happen, though. I mean, we'll cut a game off the schedule if need be. I do have Greg Tua's YPA going up to 7.5 from only 6.4. And I think that's to the offense here, like run the ball, yeah, but then take those shots, and I don't think you need to have a cannon, and Jimmy doesn't have a cannon,
No.
But, yeah. Okay. Moving on here. New England. Greg, I'll go to you because you're doing the rounds I see in New England because, the fan base is up in arms about all the draft picks, yet you being the 40-year, film analyst, you're seeing, I think, what the Patriots are seeing with some of these players. So I guess Tyquan Thornton especially, but any other thoughts on the running backs they took?
Well, Bill and I had a long conversation about this, and I told him what he should do.
Yeah.
So, he's good now.
A couple of great NFL historians, by the way, you and Bill, because Bill's like probably the best, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I actually did have a phenomenal conversation with him when I did the book with Jaworski years ago. It was unbelievable. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Again, I think with what they've done, I think you're looking at a team that clearly wants to run the football as their starting point. People can debate Cole Strange all day long, and no one knows the answer to where he would have been drafted. But I know I spoke with a couple of O-line coaches who loved Cole Strange. So that's all I can tell you. If he comes in and he's Logan Mankins, then you got to say it's a pretty good pick. So, look, they have Harris, they have Stevenson, they drafted Pierre Strong, they drafted Kevin Harris. I mean, James White theoretically is back. Who knows? I think this team wants to line up and run the ball and then work off that, which plays to what Mac Jones is. They know that. The big question, of course, was Tyquan Thornton, a player whose tape I really, really liked. And I will find out. And you know what? If I'm wrong, I will be absolutely the first to admit it. I've been wrong before. As you guys know, I base what I say on tape study, but there's so many other variables. And like I said, if I'm wrong, but I did not see a big difference between Tyquan Thornton and Chris Olave other than the logo on the helmet.
Wow. Well, where do you see him lining up? Because I think that's
probably a wide receiver, John.
Yeah, I think that's very important because I personally, for my, opinion on it, I'm watching Mac Jones play, and I did call it day one that Mac Jones was going to be good. When I saw him in that preseason, I was like, that's it. He's good. And he is. But I feel like they needed speed. They added the speed, but I was looking for like a Jerry Jeudy, like run after the catch inside type of guy. Is Thornton, can he be inside at all?
I think guys can be anywhere now, but he's probably more of an outside the numbers guy. By the way, their receiving core, John, again, they have a lot of question marks based on guys' track record. But if by chance Devontae Parker can stay healthy, he's got some talent. We know what Bourne is, and he's very good in that role. He can't be your number one and maybe not even your two, but he's a solid NFL receiver. Myers and Bourne are probably somewhat similar in that regard. Aguilar is whatever you want to say he is. He does have some vertical ability as well. So, I mean, this is not potentially a terrible receiving core.
Yeah, but I would say it's not a receiving core where you're like, oh, we're slinging it all over the field here.
Well, no, they're not going to do that.
Yeah,
we know that.
I mean, to your point, I feel like they've, they took Strong, they took Harris, so you're like, oh, they're still going to run the ball, and their guys aren't world beaters, but they are good enough if you are running the rock. You get those safeties creeping down a little bit. Bourne can make plays. We'll see about Thornton and Parker, of course. So. Yeah, I mean, I think they're still run heavy, and they're just adding more receivers of note, just in case, by the way, they get into a throw ball type of game too, more capable bodies. Anybody else have anything on the Patriots? We try and figure out the Patriots. We're usually wrong.
Just for what it's worth, John, Damian Harris is in the last year of his rookie contract. I think drafting Pierre Strong, drafting Kevin Harris might just be a check on Harris's contract. They might bring him back. I got a question for Adam. Ramondre Stevenson got benched early in the year for bad pass protection, and then we saw in small samples where he looked the part and then started to regress again. Beyond Harris's contract, have you heard anything about Stevenson and how the team feels about him and how this backfield might play out here?
I could just tell you, and I must have said this, I don't know how many times with you guys. I said they love Damian Harris. They love him as a grinder, finisher. That's why he got the goal line carries. He just does what he's asked. We know about his little bit of his injury history, but Stevens is more explosive. We know that. We get that. But they don't seem to be wanting to cede that role that Harris has.
Yeah.
Number two, remember now they don't have a bona fide offense coordinator. My understanding is Joe Judge is going to be heavily involved. What that means, I don't know yet. We're only in May.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just really fascinating how, and Belichick, it's not the first time Belichick did this. Bill called the plays. Might have been the first year that McDaniels left for Denver. But with all these running backs, you would think that it's going to be yet another balanced offense. And let's not forget, the one thing we didn't talk about is paying those two tight ends $25 million last season. This team will be super duper heavy 12 personnel. So
Greg,
one thing, they could have 6 receivers that have talent, but how are you going to balance what you're paying those tight ends? The tight ends have to play.
That's true too. Greg, back to Ramondre quickly. Well, since his name was brought up, I think we all know he's good. How good? I mean, do you see him potentially, if need be, as a foundational player?
You're talking about Ramondre Stevenson?
Yeah, or is he more like, we're gonna not exactly be run heavy, but we're happy with Ramondre as our top guy, not a foundational
I think Ramondre
guy.
Stevenson, if you gave him 250 carries, he'll gain 1,100 or 1,200 yards.
Yeah,
he's not. I wouldn't call him purely explosive, but he's got pretty light feet for a big man, and he lost weight from the time he came out of college. So, he could certainly do that if you want to play that way. I am not comparing Mac Jones to Tom Brady, but I think the trajectory of Jones's career, they probably see as similar. Keep in mind, early in Brady's career, he was not the man. Yes, they won Super Bowls, and that made people say Brady's great, and obviously had that phenomenal first Super Bowl against the Rams with that winning drive. But as you know, John, because you know Charlie Weiss, he'll tell you that Brady really didn't become Brady until his 3rd or 4th year. Those teams were built on the run game and a dominant defense. So Absolutely. I think they probably see a similar trajectory with Mac Jones.
Yeah, and I'm working with Charlie, and I went there. I'm like watching Mac Jones in preseason. Reminds me of Brady in 2001. And Charlie Greg said that Mac Jones last year was advanced where Brady was in year
right.
one.
So they have a plan, and I think they're going to follow it. Belichick doesn't worry about what other people think, obviously, and he certainly couldn't care less what we think. But I think that's their approach. They're going to run the ball. They're going to keep developing Mac Jones. They're going to add pieces in the pass game, and then it's going to just all come together in their mind over time.
I wonder if Shanahan is now thinking maybe I should have taken Mac Jones. We may never know that one. Let's move on, though. Listening to, and you're watching or listening or both, the Fantasy Points live stream here, 2022 Town Hall, doing the AFC North and the AFC East. Last team to go here for the AFC East. And I know that they say you can't judge a draft until 3 years later, BS. I'm judging it now. The Jets did a hell of a job, I thought. And Greg, this is another classic example of you have a quarterback who is not exactly ready to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. There is talent. Let's do the best job we can, putting him in a good position. And Greg, hard to say that the Jets could have done any better, really, since drafting Zach Wilson, even going back to last year's draft. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, it all falls on Zach Wilson now, and that's just the reality of life, because they added a foundation back in Breece Hall, along with Michael Carter, who's an excellent receiving back, and really probably at his best as a satellite back. So you have that. They obviously added Garrett Wilson, who's, I felt was a top 3 receiver in this draft. So now you've got a pretty good receiving core that has some depth to it as well. Ideally the O-line continues to get better. They made an important signing in Laken Tomlinson. So their guards are really solid. The left tackle position will be interesting. The kid they drafted out of Louisiana, Mac Mitchell, could end up being a starter. Whether it's this year, that remains to be seen. But they actually have some pretty good pieces in place. They've got a really good tight end group, really good. That could end up being, without the one guy, John, who catches, 100 balls, it could be as a trio one of the best in the league with Azuma, Conklin, and Jeremy Ruckert, who's going to be a better pro than college player.
And that's Wilson's comfort zone right now, at least, right? In between the numbers, I got to think.
Well, Wilson has a tendency, because it worked in college, to be a little too much of a trick shot artist. He's got to settle down. He's got to play within the structure and let the offense work. Again, this is an offense that is built on the Kyle Shanahan school, because it's LaFleur. So it's LaFleur's brother. So, this is an offense, not to be cliched, but you have to let it work. And Wilson needs to kind of settle down. He's
Adam,
a fastball thrower.
Anything on
to develop the pace,
because I don't know if you saw that video. I thought he looked pretty good. I mean, big, but any thoughts on where this kid is? Because, man, the upside is great, but what happened last year?
Who are you talking about?
Yeah,
John. Is he able to hear us?
I don't know if John was able to hear you. Because he was asking about Mekhi Becton.
Oh, well, the problem is he got so out of shape. Yeah. John, you talking about Mekhi Becton?
Yeah, Becton. Did you guys not hear me?
I don't know.
We didn't hear me because you were talking.
Yeah, the timing was way off. Anyway,
my bad.
Becton was grossly overweight. He was over 400 pounds last season. Whoa. He had a high ankle sprain. So he's got to lose the weight, and that's why they said in the spring it was going to be Fant to compete against this kid for the left tackle job.
Max Mitchell.
Mitchell, yeah.
No. I'm talking before the draft. It would be Becton compete against Fant. But the reality is, if everything's ready, Fant will be the left. Fant will be the right. Becton will be the left. If everything works out, if Becton's healthy in 375, 380, where he could move. And then they'll see if he's not ready, Max Mitchell could get a chance. And I agree with Greg. Like, if I get it, he's a 4th round pick, but he's super athletic and he's pretty talented.
Yep.
And they graded him kind of a little bit. They're probably higher on him than maybe some teams that I spoke to, but the athleticism shows up.
I know Pro Football Focus was high on him. Sorry about that, Greg. I think I had literally an internet lag there, and then we caught up. But think back to Mekhi Becton his rookie year, because I thought the career got off to a hell of a start. I mean, if the Jets get the best that Mekhi Becton has to deliver, could that be an elite left tackle?
Well, at his best, yes. He's a big man with light feet. Yes. That's an unknown at this point. The point I was making, John, I'll just repeat it because you may not have heard me, was while they don't have a tight end that's going to catch 100 balls, I think the trio of tight ends that they have could end up being very, very good.
Oh, yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yep. But unfortunately for us, they kind of cancel each other out, Adam.
From a fantasy perspective, maybe not, but just talking ball.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. And I think that's a great trio of blankets, if you will, for Wilson. But Adam, it seems like they are high on Conklin. So I think he might be your move guy.
Yeah, and
Uzama's just your boring inline guy.
Yeah, I think Uzama will be more of a Y tight end. He can do both. Conklin could do both, but they think analytically, like the data they had on him showed that he's pretty athletic. So yeah, Greg's right. I mean, they're loaded. Conklin's very underrated. He turned out to be a better player probably than
Yes, he looked very athletic last year on tape, I thought.
Yeah, and that's a big reason, Greg, why they went after him.
And I thought Ruckert, it was at Ohio State where he didn't get many targets, but Ruckert was a big time recruit out of Long Island, the first or second rated tight end coming out of high school in the country. I think he's really going to be a good pro over time.
Now, Greg,
when Ruckert was in high school, he was mainly a wide receiver. So when he got to Ohio State, I mean, he had to spend a lot of time learning how to work inline, and I think that played into the reason why he wasn't able to get as many targets.
There were some teams that had like not first round grades, but starter grades on him. It was all about upside with him, and West just added that point. So the guy's got athleticism to him.
Yeah.
So yeah, look, the Jets, John, you're right. They knocked it out. It's a matter of, can they get him going? The coaching there, obviously Mike LaFleur and the quarterback's coach, and it's so sad the late Greg Knapp was going to work with him, and what a tragedy. He lost his life last summer, but they move on. They try to develop the situation, but they've surrounded him with they're deeper, as Greg said. They're deeper at. We didn't even talk about Elijah Moore, who they love.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Braxton Berrios is back as more of a slot receiver. So I'll tell you what they told me at receiver. I'll tell you who's playing X and Z. They gave me got some new information there, but
yeah, I believe that was Wilson. But Greg, quickly back to Ruckert. Didn't play a lot, run heavy. I actually had him as the second best tight end prospect in this draft class because I talked to people. I saw him a little bit at the Senior Bowl. Is that fair? Might he, next to Trey McBride, be the safest, complete traditional tight end?
I think it's fair. Based on his athleticism. Obviously, he became a blocker at Ohio State because he had to be. They do run the ball. So no, Ruckert. You could make the argument easily that Ruckert was the number 2 tight end behind McBride. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
yeah,
John,
Adam. Yeah.
Here's all right. So Corey Davis will remain as the Z. I know because he's big. You typically play that guy at X, but he's better at Z, which is what the Titans thought. Garrett Wilson, they're going to cross train at X and slot, and Eli will play all 3 positions. It just they'll figure it out where he lands, but he's got the intelligence to play all 3.
So when there are 2 wide receivers on the field, do we think it's going to be Wilson and Moore? I would say yes.
Probably. Well, Davis is bigger, so he gives them, depending on the matchup, if they think they need size. It's just who's the best, the 2 best talents, obviously Wilson and Moore. And Moore, Wilson, by the way, he's also really smart. He could line up he's capable of lining up all 3, but they're going to cross train at 2. I was told.
Does Garrett Wilson, Greg, strike you as, I know he's a very high level prospect, but does he strike you as a guy who can, produce right away? That does seem to me like a tough ask with a young quarterback who certainly hasn't arrived. I could see Garrett Wilson, being a little up and down, flashing late and creating excitement for next year. But, any thoughts on that kid in this offense as a rookie?
Well, I think it all depends on the quarterback. I mean, I think Wilson is a pretty refined receiver who can line up both inside and outside with that flexibility. But I think his target share, John, which is what you're concerned about, will very much be a function of what their pass offense is and the development of Zach Wilson.
And the Jets have done everything to help Zach Wilson, Adam. And I've talked to other people about this. I know you have a source there. It sure as hell seems like Zach Wilson is responding well to all this, and he's doing everything he needs to do, early to the building, devoted, fully buying in, all that good stuff, right?
Well, the big thing is he's accountable. He knows there are certain things he's got to do better. Greg has told us, I think we all saw with our own eyes, he needs to take someone off that fastball. With pass targets inside 10 yards, he's trying to throw the ball too much. He needs to take something off of it. But if you just look what they've done on the offensive line, if everybody's healthy, it's going to be much better. Their pass target group is much better. They're super deep at receiver and tight end now. And at running back, by the way, So look, it's all there now. I think Greg set this up really well. There's no more excuses. I get it. He's now in the second year, but they've set him up really well. And they're feeling better about their defense because of what they added in the draft, which is pretty significant. So this Jets team, folks, this is a pretty good roster that they're putting together here. It's not perfect. They need more work, but they've made some significant upgrades this offseason.
I have one quick question, if I can, for Greg.
Yeah.
Do you know why did Zach Wilson struggle so bad against cover one during his rookie year? He was just terrible.
Yeah, I didn't know that specifically because he was not very good overall. So I didn't necessarily know that. I think that, I mean, overall, and I'm sure this factors into cover one, he had accuracy issues a year ago. And when you're playing against cover one man coverage, as we know in the NFL, the window is very tight. Ball placement, ball location is critical, and he struggled with that. He did not see a lot of that kind of tight man coverage in college football. You normally don't see that. And a lot of college quarterbacks do struggle with number one, understanding what's open in the NFL is the first part. That becomes intuitive, ideally over time, but then just making the kinds of throws that you have to make against quality man coverage. But he was not, his ball placement last year, Wes, was lacking overall.
Adam has always said that, people he's talked to are concerned about Corey Davis against man. So I wonder if that was part of it. But before we move on, I think we all loved Elijah Moore last year. I mean, it didn't take long for me to watch even the damn highlights. Like, oh yeah, that kid right there. Greg, what did you think of his rookie year? I know it was a little up and down. What did you think about, the moments he did flash? I mean, how good can that kid be?
I think he can be very good. Again, I hate to reiterate, but I mean, as far as fantasy, John, it all comes back to the quarterback. But I think Moore can play all three positions, as Adam said. He's capable of that physically. He's, for a smaller receiver, he plays through contact exceptionally well.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I could see him. Imagine him in Kansas City, man. Yeah. Well, let's move on here to the AFC North here. We're doing two divisions today, AFC East, AFC North. We'll go to Baltimore. And Adam, I'll go back to you. I was just talking about this with you on the radio. Like, they're going to play like 7 tight ends here on the field.
They're going to play 15 personnel.
Was it 13 personnel, right? I mean, we don't really hear about that a lot.
Yeah. Well, look, it'll be heavy 12, but the one thing they're looking for, because I know they talked to teams during the draft, they're looking for speed at receiver opposite Bateman after the trade of Hollywood Brown. Prochet he's slot only, and Duvernay was a outside receiver Texas, and he moved to slot inside his final year. He's best off inside. They need to find someone who could run. I know they have some interest in Jarvis Landry, but the fact of the matter is that to me is a little bit of an issue on the outside, John. But yeah, they're going to be heavy 12 personnel. I cannot believe that. I was saying to you this morning, and I do wonder if they'll line up Isaiah Likely other than tight end. Maybe they line him up outside a little bit because they need someone who could help Bateman.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Greg, seeing how they've constructed the roster, trading away Hollywood Brown and drafting a couple of really good tight ends, they also get Nick Boyle back. Can you see, I don't want to say regress or devolve, but I mean, I felt like a year ago we were talking about expanding things, and now I feel like we're talking about contracting things. Maybe I'm overreacting. Any thoughts there?
I don't think you are. I think they're telling us what they want to do by what they've done in the draft and what they've done with free agent signings. Don't forget they're going to get J.K. Dobbins back. They still have Gus Edwards. They just signed Mike Davis. They drafted Tyler Beatty, who's actually a very intriguing player. Not a foundation back, but a very intriguing player. So I think they're telling us what they want their offense to look like. I think they're going to go back to Lamar as the foundation as a runner. I think that's where they feel they work best. I mean, right now, as we sit here today, their starting wide receivers, if they're in 11 personnel, I assume would be Bateman, Duvernay, and Prochet. Would they not?
I assume that right now as well.
So
I don't think Tylan Wallace would fit into that.
I think Tylan Wallace would be the next guy in the mix.
Yeah, I don't think Prochet would be that. I would be stunned if Prochet was that guy.
I know he's slow as hell, but the guy catches everything.
But Wallace, if Wallace has any juice, they need someone who could run on the outside opposite Bateman. They love Bateman, man. They have a major man crush on Bateman's talent. It's too bad he tore his groin last summer, Johnny. Remember, they were
absolutely.
Out season, and then unfortunately got hurt.
I'm already sold, Greg, on Rashad Bateman. I mean, I thought maybe it was only for about 3 games, but I thought you looked at your scouting report on the positives, everything was on display. I mean, a professional receiver, maybe not a stud, but I'm sold on that kid already. Greg, Bateman, your thoughts?
No, I like Bateman a lot. I don't have a problem with Bateman at all. I just don't know what their offense is going to look like. So I think that's the big question because, I think they could well be back to the run-first offense where there's not necessarily a lot of target share for wide receivers.
Could you argue that right now their best downfield playmakers might actually be one or both of the rookie tight ends? Because Likely can run. Kohler can run a little bit.
No, Kohler is not that guy.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Kohler is more of the quarterback best friend type of tight end. Kohler is the kind of guy when it's 3rd and 8, he catches a 10-yard ball. Kohler, to be cliched but true, he gets open and catches everything. That's what Kohler is.
Sure. Well, I did see with my own 2 eyes, Likely getting open at the Senior Bowl.
Likely can run. Likely has some juice.
Yeah. Well, does anyone have any interest in any other of the receivers for fantasy other than Bateman? I would think we're digging.
I'm going to throw out a name just because I liked his tape a lot, and I thought he was a very draftable player. But, of course, once you're a free agent, everything is different in the way you're treated. But I really liked Mekhi Polk coming out of Mississippi State. He caught over 100 balls there, but it was the air raid, so he lined up in the same spot every time, didn't run many routes. I thought he was pretty talented. I thought he was worthy of being drafted.
Oh, he ran a 4.59. That probably hurt him. Okay. But you like his tape. All right.
I did like his tape.
Cool.
Yeah, and I guess it's just so premature to even comment on Dobbins and Gus Edwards. I have.
Yeah, we don't know.
But Tyler Batty, Greg, I'm intrigued too. I mean, this guy, tough to knock off his spot for a 5'8", 190.
Yeah, I liked him. I thought he was a good player. I figured he'd be drafted where he was because, obviously smaller back, not a foundation back, but he's got some talent.
Well,
I guess you mentioned wide receiver, and one guy that I'll throw out there that when he at Texas, he was thrust into a bigger role was Devin Duvernay. Obviously he's a Pro Bowl returner and stuff, but he looked pretty good that year at Texas when he had a massive target share. So I'd like to see what he could do with some extra targets in this offense.
Yeah, look, John Harbaugh, was high-fiving people. He was very excited after he drafted him. And he did have a little – and I noticed, he did have more catches. I think it was like 40 that I remembered when I went ahead and dove in there. 33. Still a little bit more than I thought. Anybody else have anything on these Baltimore Ravens? I guess I have Lamar throwing like 33 times a game. I think that – Greg, is that too high? 33
might be.
I think it is.
What are his attempts per game of the previous years?
Right around there. I think just under it maybe. I have him with 135 rushing attempts per game. It's like 8 to 9 a game. That might be too low.
That's what I'm worried about though. Is the ankle he had? Is he going to run as much? Are they going to try to keep him in the pocket? I'm a little worried about that.
Yeah, I think I factored that in too. So sometimes you're factoring in things on both sides of an equation. We can move on. The Baltimore Ravens don't have a ton going on. The Bengals, they're actually kind of boring because we know the deal with everyone, although we don't know about the tight end situation. Adam, are they really going into this year? And I don't think Hayden Hurst is terrible, but I don't know. Maybe I don't even know if that's an upgrade or a downgrade.
I mean, Sample will be their Y tight end. Hurst will be their move tight end. That's pretty much.
Yeah. Is that an upgrade or a downgrade?
Than anybody?
And true Sample, what were they thinking taking him the second round? To this day, I'll never understand.
But Hayden Hurst versus CJ Uzomah in terms of receiving game, like
Uzomah's more sturdy, John. The knock on Hurst, he's too finesse.
Yeah.
That's what people I spoke to who work with him said. Love the kid. He's athletic, but he does not. He's not great at playing through contact. Is the term, and that's why he's on yet another team.
Yeah, but he'll be like an available target over the middle, for Burrow to kind of check it down to.
Right, but here's the problem. He's going to be the fourth option. Chase, Higgins, Boyd, and afterthought.
I know. It is worth noting, though. I mean, among all the tight ends, like he might actually kind of have, be the sneakiest out there. But we're not that excited.
You're digging deep. I mean, you're
I know.
Maybe catches.
But look, he's a former number 1 pick who's a tight end 1 in a good offense with a great quarterback.
Right, so, but he's also 29 in August because he played baseball.
I know.
So yeah, I wouldn't draft him. I mean, if for fantasy, I wouldn't draft him.
Greg, you spent a lot of time looking at the Bengals tape. Obviously, they made it to the Super Bowl. So now that they add in, Kappa and Karras and I don't know, maybe Jackson Carman, 2nd-round pick a year ago.
Collins too.
And Lyle Collins.
Yeah, it's
true.
Huge.
Right. So, how much better can the Bengal running game be with these upgrades? We know the pass protection is going to be a lot better, but how much better can their running game be this year?
I think they would probably like it to be a little more consistent. I mean, there were stretches when it was really good, but I think that they would probably like it to be a little more consistent, and by that I mean, it's one thing for Mixon to have a couple of games where he gets 130 or 135, but there were also a bunch of games where, if you look at his game-by-game breakdown, where the yardage was not necessarily there. So my sense is they would probably like that to be a little better. Look, I think they're ultimately, I don't want to say they're a passing team per se, obviously because of Burrow and their receivers, they still have that trio of receivers. They're very good, obviously. But I would think they would like their run game to do a little more. Now, that could have been an O-line issue as well. Obviously, they addressed this O-line. They will have 4 new starters, ideally. So they'll have 4 new starters, along with Jonah Williams at left tackle, who personally I just think is okay. But But that's really we don't know that because it's 4 new starters. So we don't know how that's going to play out.
Yeah. Pollock's a good O-line coach, though.
Yeah, he is.
Just to piggyback off of Greg's point, Joe Mixon is, in my view, one of the 3 or 4 best in terms of just talent. He's one of the 3 or 4 best runners in the NFL. He had 7 straight games to close out their season where he was held below 3.6 yards per carry. Yep. That can't happen. I mean, especially with a player of Mixon's talent. After they blew up the Steelers, after they blew up the Steelers in like week 12 or week 13, whatever it was, I mean, that run game really fell apart. And now with these 3, new offensive linemen, no new additions in this backfield. Like Joe Mixon had, like, John, we were talking about this with Derrick Henry in Discord last week. Like, would it surprise you if Joe Mixon outscored Derrick Henry? But the perception in the community is that Derrick Henry's still a top 5 picks and Joe Mixon's, a borderline first rounder. Like, I am all in on Joe Mixon this year.
We have Joe Mixon priced with the markets, and we have him over Henry, and we're down on Henry.
Oh.
So, yeah.
I like that.
I get it.
With you. Adam, how surprised are you, by the way? I know they didn't have a ton of picks, that they did not add anyone of note in the backfield.
Well, now they can, as you know, they can add a veteran by August by training.
Yeah, of course.
I like Pirine though. I think Pirine's he really showed us
guy,
stuff last year.
Yeah,
he's just a guy.
I mean, I hear you, Wes. I look at Pirine though, and I'm like, I'd probably want an upgrade, but they didn't opt.
Exactly. What I mean though is that he's a capable backup. I think he's and really impressed me as a receiver. That was really what impressed me the most.
I know. Unfortunately, he's too impressive because he's starting to take away a little bit from Mixon because they use him a little bit in that passing game.
John, you're right. If Mixon gets hurt, they're stuck. They don't have.
Yeah, they're stuck.
So that's what you want. You want someone who can handle 10, 12, 13 carries, so you feel good about. They don't have that guy.
Let's go to Cleveland, kind of in the dark a little bit, obviously, not knowing exactly what's up with Deshaun Watson. I personally liked the Amari Cooper addition. I'm actually never been a huge Cooper guy, but Greg, I can just see, based on what Watson's put on tape here, the guy sees the field. And, I could just see him clicking quickly with a technician like Amari Cooper. Just generally, I kind of like Cooper here in Cleveland with Deshaun.
Yeah, I look, Watson is a really good quarterback. I don't think that's an issue at all. So he puts up numbers. There's going to be balls thrown. Cooper is their number one clearly, because anybody else at this point is an unknown.
Yeah.
They drafted David Bell in the 3rd round. I actually think he's a pretty interesting player. The only thing he really lacks is speed. And obviously the combine, it probably didn't hurt him a ton. He probably wouldn't have been higher than a 3rd round pick anyway. But I think Cooper's going to get a lot of targets in this offense. I really do.
Yeah. I mean, because he really does stand out as like the alpha dog here. I mean, amazingly so. And Bell's a great kid. Do you think he can? I know he played inside, right? I mean, they're thinking like that's kind of your Jarvis Landry replacement, Greg.
He didn't play a ton inside, but he probably can. He's a big kid. He's very physical. He's a professional route runner, and he catches the ball. I mean, he's just does not have a ton of juice, but there are receivers like that. I'm not going to compare him to Cooper Kupp in a strict sense, but Cooper Kupp ran a 4.62 40 at the combine. And a lot of people, immediately said, well, this guy can't play in the NFL. Coming out of Eastern Washington, he ran a 4.62. So you have to be careful about making those kinds of judgments.
Yeah, but yeah, no doubt. I mean, really good dude, though. I could tell you that. I liked him quite a bit.
I think he's going to be a good player. I don't know what his target share will be in Cleveland this year, but they're going to throw the ball. Look, obviously they're going to run it. We know that. But they're also, Deshaun Watson is just a better player than Baker Mayfield. Stefanski's not going to – I don't think he's going to hold back on throwing the football because he's got a really good quarterback.
They'll up that number, John. That passing average attempts per game is going to go up.
Yeah.
Anthony Schwartz, just keep an eye on this. They want to get him in the slot because they think as a vertical slot he'll be really effective.
Yeah.
Well, that kid can run.
Yeah, that's it. And they think vertically out of this inside he could be really effective. I mean, they don't have the greatest receiver corps, but they have some versatility. Schwartz could run. He's their speed guy. We'll see how they line him up. Jakeem Grant's there. More a returner, but he's there.
And Greg too, back to you, but like let's say they don't like David Bell like inside and they want him to play. They want to get him out there. DPJ David Bell. I mean, who's to say Cooper's not your slot receiver in 11 personnel, right?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I think they've got a lot of options with what they can do, as most teams now do. So we'll see. I mean, Schwartz is probably a little bit of a wild card here because I don't know if he'll ever be a volume target, but he can really, really run. And he was a 3rd round pick, so I imagine they're going to try to work him in. He's not going to be an afterthought. Absolutely,
because they really don't have speed here. Other than maybe Njoku, and that's another layer here because, they've got a bunch of tight ends. Do they line up Njoku inside or outside? I guess not. But, Greg, you did go ahead pre-draft, obviously, when you did the prospect guide and the write-up for Jerome Ford. You do this all the time. You make a comp, and then the team makes a pick, that lines up with your comp, basically. And you comped Jerome Ford to Kareem Hunt, and this could be the last year of Kareem Hunt. What did you see similarly between those two players?
Well, I liked Ford a lot. Ford was an Alabama recruit, and it didn't work out there, so he transferred to Cincinnati. I think he's a pretty tough runner inside. He's got some juice to him. He can run away from people. He's a very good receiver. And I think that that's the thing that you look for now a lot with backs when you watch them to see how they can transition to the league. Again, backs, you never know where they get drafted. To me, he was better than a 5th round pick, but he's a back. So, that back seemed to drop. We'll see. If Hunt is, I don't know the contract situation with Hunt. I don't follow that closely. Final year. I mean, Ford could easily be that guy. I mean, Chubb they just signed, so he's not going anywhere. So I could see Ford replacing Hunt.
Yeah, and also the other guy to keep an eye on would be our guy Harrison Bryant, of course, at tight end. I guess the presence of Njoku will like kind of block potential breakout, but another quality player on a team that, well, at least prospect or young player on a team that doesn't have a ton of them. And then finally, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, Greg, I think I've talked with you about this overall. I feel pretty darn good about where they are. The O-line wasn't that bad last year. It's still not great, but they've got that wide receiver algorithm, and they get it right more often than not. And Pickens and Austin were pretty darn impressive here. We'll see about the quarterback battle, but I'm assuming, and I think most people are, Greg, that this is almost plug and play with Kenny Pickett, probably going to start double-digit games. We know he's pro-ready. The continuity is amazing. It's the same damn building. It seems to me, Greg, like everything is in line here for Kenny Pickett to make a pretty seamless transition into the NFL.
Well, they drafted him with their first pick in the draft. They signed Trubisky to a very friendly deal where he could easily be cut after this year, as Adam probably knows.
Yep.
I would think that that's a competition. I would think that it's not, Kenny Pickett's a backup this year.
Yeah, it is. No, he said they're opening it up.
And again, maybe I'll be wrong, but I would be surprised if Kenny Pickett didn't win that. And again, he'll be a rookie. So I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to be phenomenal, but I think they know. They're in the AFC, guys, okay? That's not a profound statement, obviously. They're in the AFC. They know that, bottom line, in a conference with Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Herbert, are they competing for a Super Bowl with Mitchell Trubisky?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Burrow. Do you have to squint that much to comp Pickett to Burrow?
I don't think I do, and again, I don't want people listening to think I'm making a one-to-one comparison, but I don't think that's way off the charts. Yeah,
that's good. That would be good for Steeler fans, and and then Najee Harris, a little grindery, but Adam, they're going to be a little bit more wide open now. RPOs. Yeah. I'm sure more downfield play. I mean, this whole offense could really kind of open up a little bit for Najee.
Yeah, Matt Canada, he could not really run the offense like he wanted to with Roethlisberger. So yeah, I agree. They will open it up. If don't forget about Calvin Austin for fantasy. I don't know that he's draftable, but just as a pass target who's super explosive, and God forbid Chase Claypool gets himself together. This is a heck of a group with our guy Gabe Davis and Patty F at tight end. John, this is a super gift, and they're going to be more 11 personnel this season. I don't know what they played last year in 11 versus 12, but you can expect the 11 group to go up. So this is going to be fun.
Greg, before we wrap it up, Chase Claypool, you didn't love him. Rookie year was good. Second year, not so good. You love Pickens. So compare Pickens and Claypool. What can Pickens do that Claypool can't, maybe, or vice versa?
I mean, I think Pickens is a very complete receiver. I personally thought Pickens overall, just based on tape, was the number one receiver in this draft. I knew he would not go that way because he had some issues that people wanted to work through. But I think that he's really, really gifted. Claypool to me he's very straight line. I think he can run, but I don't think he's really a complete receiver in any way. I think Deontay Johnson, when he catches the ball, is really, really good. But I'm fascinated by the drafting of Pickens and Calvin Austin. I really am.
Yeah, Adam and I were sitting together on the bleachers in Mobile watching Calvin Austin get open every route. Like guys couldn't run with him.
I think Calvin Austin, to me, and I made this point, John, in my transition, I think he could be a little bit of the exception. I'm not saying you're going to line him up on the outside and that's all you're going to do, but he beat press in college. He ran routes from the outside. He had a feel for route running. I think Austin could line up pretty much anywhere in your formation.
I could tell you he's a great kid, and he's got a personality that it's like kind of old school kind of personality. Like, and I think that's kind of where you're going with that, right? Like, he's not just some, speedy
He's
track
not a
star
track guy playing receiver. He's more than that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we all think Pat Fryermuth is good. I don't think we need to expand too much on that. We all love Deontay. Adam, a little surprising, by the way, they didn't do anything else in the backfield.
Yeah, they don't really have – we don't know who their handcuff will be. They really – because McFarland was coached by Canada in college for 1 year, and I remember talking to Matt about that. But he's a change-up. Benny Snell is sluggish. They need a – it would behoove them to add another back. Yeah, so you're right. It's kind of wide open. The offensive line, they believe is going to be better. They think their depth will be better. They're gonna kind of stick with mostly what they had last season. So it's adding James Daniels, who's a good player, formerly the Bears. So look, their offense is going to be better than it was last season.
All right, wrapping it up here. Did we decide when we're doing the next two divisions? By the way, we can figure that out later, but I'll take that as a no. We thank our guy Ben Kukanis. Check everything out at fantasypoints.com if you're just watching this on YouTube. By the way, Underdog Fantasy, our new partner this year, use the promo code FANTASYPTS for a $100 match bonus cash thing. So we'll wrap it here. Back again in the very, very near future to do the AFC South and West. For Greg Cosell and Adam Caplan and Graham Barfield and Joe Dolan and Wes Huber and Tom Brawley and Scott Barrett, I'm John Hansen. This has been the Fantasy Points 2022 Town Hall live stream here at fantasypoints.com.